All right, so my name is Husein. I'm a senior manager at IBM. Most of you guys run from startups or small companies. I represent the opposite scale of the spectrum. We are 400,000 people roughly. What I'm going to talk to you about is it's actually quite closely related to what Sylvia just talked about. We're actually going to go a little bit on people and then we'll talk about some shifts happening in the marketplace. You guys are all at the cutting edge of, whatever the latest buzzword is, security stuff, blockchain, cloud, whatever it is you're developing. There's lots of buzzwords. We're all focused on that. We know that there's an incredible amount of change happening. But there's a people change happening right now. And this is a talk that I could have given 20 years ago, or someone could have given 20 years ago. Or I could probably give it again in about 20 years, where there's a generational shift happening. So that's what I'm going to talk about. Before I get into some of the content, I just want to get a feel for the crowd. Anyone in here a profile holding manager? Oh, you are. Hold on. A profile holding manager. You have employees that report to you. Okay. So a few people. Okay. Keep your hands up, actually. For those who are profile. Okay. Is there any HR people in the room? Generally speaking, like you generalize here, slightly older demographic, right? I'm going to talk about that in a second. I'm also a profile holding manager. So let me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put together sort of a framework. I'm going to give you what's happening in the world. It's not just a Canadian thing. It's not just a tech thing. What's happening in the world? Let me talk about that, and then I'll talk about some of my experiences in that context. So first, there's a lot to unpack here. So let me walk you through this. There are, labels for many generations. If you take a look at this is something put together by Business Insider. The data comes from the Pew Research Center. But it really talks about the major generations. I'm going to focus a little bit kind of on the three boomers generation and millennials. So again, crowd question. How many here would say, based on this definition, you're a boomer? Okay. Literally everyone. Generation X. Okay, a few more. And then millennials. So yes. Any post-millennials? Post-millennials? Yeah, okay. So that hasn't even been defined yet, so maybe the problems are here.
Elder no.
Sorry?
Elder no.
Yeah. So those are the sort of the generations that exist. And, they're a little bit fuzzy. It's not exactly 1981 for millennial. Depending on who you ask, plus or minus a couple years. But each of these generations has characteristics. So again, we're all unique individuals. We can't paint everyone with the same brush. Generally speaking, there are some common characteristics between these generations. The numbers to the right of them, that is the percentage of the Canadian population in 2018. Okay? So slightly under 24% of Canadians, or 8.84 billion people, are boomers. Right? You see the age range, plus one to that. This is a 2018 chart, so boomers would now be 55 to 73. About half of them probably still on the workforce. Right? Generation X, about 20%. Millennials, slightly over 23%. It happened around 2014, 2015, no exact date per se, but around that time, millennials became the largest generation in the workforce. Right? So more millennials work than either boomers or Gen X. So that's what those numbers tell you in terms of sort of percentage of Canadian population. Now on this side, I think this is the most interesting part. This is kind of what was driving a little bit of my talk. The retirement rate. So approximately 350,000 Canadians per year are retired. If you do the math on that, that's about 1,000 a day. Right? I don't know how many of you guys work for US companies or have worked with people in the US. Their population is about 10 times the size of us, and their rate is about 10 times the size as well. So you have about 10,000 people per day in the US retiring. So what does that mean? Why is this interesting? Why does it matter? Well, there's this big vacuum there, right? As that generation is now retiring at an incredible rate, there's this sort of uplift happening in the workplace for Obviously, some Generation X people who are already in leadership roles, but especially now millennials, right? A lot of millennials are getting pulled in. And not even so much the later age of having a 38-year-old manager, that's probably not a big deal. But even going early, right? People in their late 20s, mid 20s, early 30s, moving into management. And so that creates some interesting workforce dynamics, right? And I'll talk, I moved into management at the age of 21. I'll talk about a couple of different stories in that context of somewhat funny, but real issues happen in the workforce. Okay? For the next slide, I'm going to talk a couple stories about these. You're going to read this quicker than I talk to it, and you're going to say, this is extremely basic. Like, this is so obvious. This is such common sense. Why would the leader from IBM come and put that up on the slide? Were there any HR people? I can tell you, we look at a lot of statistics, employee feedback, and all that stuff. Some of these basics that I'm going to talk about don't actually happen. And I'm sure everyone's got a story of a crazy manager that just did something out to left field that shouldn't have done, or that just doesn't make sense. I'm sure we've all done that. So let me tell you about a couple of my own examples, how I dealt with that. I keep a blog, millennialleader.com. I don't blog enough, but I try to write some of these stories. So the two stories I'm going to tell you are from my own blog post. Okay? So the first one is, if I go back to May 2013, right, when I first got moved into management. As I said earlier, 31 years old. One of the employees who's going to work for me, she had been at IBM for 38 years. Okay. 7 years into her career, I was born. So imagine me prepping for that first sort of career discussion one-on-one, where I'm supposed to give her guidance on her career. Seriously, what am I going to tell her, right? But this is a common situation that's happening now, right? Where you might be managing people with 10, 15, 20, or more years of experience than you. How do you handle that situation potentially as a new leader or as a manager? I can tell you that first one-on-one, other than a situation where we're going to let someone go in and need to ensure all the paperwork was good, this was the meeting I probably prepped with the most. And what are the tactics that one could use, right? Again, 31-year-old manager, I could have done the hot shot. Right? I could come in, I'm a manager now, I do as I say, blah, 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 blah. That probably wouldn't have worked out well. And so I had to really think about, how do I give the respect that leaders without being overbearing, respect that particular individual's experience, so actually leverage it, right? And so some very simple things that I talk about here. Be honest, right, with your experience and capabilities. Imagine you get a new manager. Let's say you've been a part of the team for X amount of time, and your new manager probably doesn't know much about that team. The last thing you want to do is dictate. So if you find yourself in this situation, be predictive. Right? Ask for help. Again, a little bit more detail on my own story. Again, so I moved into management for the first time. I also moved into management in an area I did not know. So I worked in IT, did a bunch of stuff, within IT projects and things like that. This position was on the IT security team, which I almost had. So I've done lots of other stuff on IT, but not IT security. So there I am, new manager, and I didn't know what I thought. It's fairly obvious to my employees and very obvious to the person who did that for 3 years. So you have to be honest about that. Ask for help. As I said earlier, you don't want to be talking about this. You really want to respect that person's skills and experience. You want to make them feel valued. The other thing I found too, just when I get my own experience, I spend a lot of time explaining my decisions. If I have a team meeting where we're going down a particular strategy, or I'm trying to shift the direction, I'm trying to change some of the stuff that we're doing, I spend a lot of time both at the team meeting and after the fact explaining a lot. And I think, we're so caught up in speed and all of this stuff, that maybe your culture is like that, where you do that, some people don't. Like, to become in management, and it's just like, again, as I said, even though I'm much younger than you, and you don't have experience, we just still going to do that aspect. I found that it doesn't work. And I had some experience of, former peers of things that use crazy stuff like that. It really does. And so, whether you're explaining at a team meeting, what your decisions are, or then after the fact. I think one of the other things that is, within a team, so we talk about culture, right? You have your leaders within your team. But make sure they are bought into the changes that you want to explain why you're trying to change what you're doing. What are the benefits, right? It's really important to make those individuals who may be more experienced than you, possibly older than you, vastly older than you, but you respect. And so again, this might sound like common sense, but you'd be surprised at how often this doesn't happen. If there were HR people in the room, they'd probably all be nodding and a bunch of issues that they're dealing. So that's one. That's talking about kind of how you adjust yourself as a potential new leader, or even now, if you've been leading for a while, with people that are more experienced. Okay. I'm going to switch to the second half of my experiences. So my current manager, who I think is an excellent manager, good mentor, really working for the guy. He's been at IBM 39 years. So another individual whose career is longer than my life. So as I said, we get along great, work together, excellent. But we are fundamentally different. Right? And some of my peers, as I have two other peer managers within our organization, both of them have more than 20 years of management experience. So I'm the new kid, so to speak, the young guy. And so, how do I operate in that team? How do I make sure that I still get my voice across? I'm still one of the managers, one of the leaders on the team, so I have to help kind of drive where the team goes. But how do I do that in a context when everyone around me is very different? Me as a millennial, I think different than someone who's a non-millennial. We also have different life curves too, and that's a big factor. So some of the things I talk about is actually maybe dumb luck or brilliance on, I also talk about culture, but get into topics from roughly the same topic. Be aware of your organization's culture. So what do I mean by this? As I said, me, go back 5 years, new to the management team, and if we're talking about, say, an employee engagement thing, I probably should have been, or I didn't, but probably don't want to go in there saying, hey, we need to get a new Snapchat filter, we're going to make sure the music is so-and-so, latest greatest, some trade come in, all of these types of things. If I do that, when everyone around me is very different, I'm not going to have a lot of success. So I have to adjust myself a little bit. And this one is a little controversial sometimes because, the one end of the spectrum, people say, well, you should really, if you believe in something, go for it. You're there for a particular purpose, you've got certain skills, experience, you should do exactly what you're doing. What I found is I have to adjust, right? So I give some specific examples. My boss will come in and tell me about a TV show that he thinks is the most interesting thing on earth. I don't really think it's interesting. We have different TV watching preferences. So I'm not going to sit there and debate him about whether it's good or bad or this and that. It's more just acceptance or whatever, kind of going on. So that's what I mean by adjusting yourself. Sometimes, and again, I'm not trying to age discriminate, but sometimes my boss or people around me maybe fumble with technology that comes a little bit quicker and naturally easier to me. Instead of being annoying about it, just kind of let it happen on its own pace and scale. Versus me just go, that's just good. Right? So it's about holding back and kind of just, find common ground. Again, my boss being much older than I am, we actually went to the same high school. It doesn't make me when I say this, but we graduated in different millenniums. Right? But find some common ground and use that to sort of build that relationship and be able to sort of function well within that culture. Manager perceptions. A story about this one. It actually happened probably about a year before I became a manager. I was working with a bunch of leaders, some things like some very senior people. Worked on a pretty big project. It went fairly well, a few months. And towards the end of the project, my wife and I had to go out of town, driving back. on 401. And I don't know if you guys know out east, there's that, it's called the Apple Factory, right? The really good apple pies. This is not even, if you haven't been there, check it out. So I really like apple pie. So we stopped in and picked some up. Then I thought, I'm in the store and I'm like, why you're working with these people? Why don't I pick up a few extras? Right? I picked up like 3 or 4 extra apple pies, $6. No big deal. And we're passing work on the way home. And so the business case off. But we thought, we'll pop in and for this team that I've been working with, I'll drop this off just as a nice gesture. So I did that. Introduced the VP, some of the leaders to my wife, was going to have a pie, have a great weekend, blah, 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 blah. Critical mistake. Critical mistake. That got me labeled as a psycho very early on. Again, before I go and so, you can kind of have a philosophical debate about this one. You can say, well, you did something nice. Who cares? Or other people, think about it. But my point, I made a naive mistake for a culture. The people I was working with did not have that culture that I was confident. So I did something that was nice. Maybe you guys don't do this kind of stuff like jump off twice every week in the sprint. But the team that I was working with, and the sort of much more senior than me and come from a slightly different cloth, did not go over well. Unfortunately, that wasn't sort of a career move to be, but it wasn't. But that's what I mean by manager perception. You have to know the culture you're in. So Sylvia talked about shaping and driving culture, and I think that's obviously very important. Sometimes as a new guy, I don't really get to decide that. I have to kind of blend into the culture that I was. So, this is really important managing the perception. People, this is a whole separate topic to talk about, but perception versus reality, right? The things that we do, you may have a personal situation at home, you're looking after an elderly parent or a child or something, that forces you to be worried, come to date, whatever. So you've got a real life problem. What is the perception that you're not? That's the real problem. Right? So the huge problem. So that's something you want to consider if you're in a leadership position, working with a whole bunch of people that are of a different generation or have different perspectives or different expectations. Okay. I already talked about kind of the last one about knowing when to hold back. This isn't something that sort of came to me naturally, right? I used to sort of, if you study emotional intelligence, for example, reading how the things you do are being perceived. I would, let's say, if I take an example, my manager would be fumbling with using a very basic, or he's even talking about what is this instrument doing? Why do I need it? Kind of something get it to work. Yeah, basic, right? I wouldn't say that, right? And doing so, and be like, oh, it's so easy, blah, 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 blah. You just kind of like that. So, I don't have any more slides than this, or what I really just wanted to kind of leave you guys with is kind of 2 points. One is, not so many people put up their hands for profile data manager. I don't know how many of those people that didn't have aspirations to be manager in the future, and they're getting up. Sometimes you don't have choice. Because this is happening in some companies, maybe not so much in startups where you get to decide who you are. It's probably in all sort of established organizations where a lot of skill and talent is actually you because of retirement. And sometimes you have no choice but to take, you've only been here 4 years, but you're my most senior guy now, and we're going to need you to take on more leadership. You may not have a choice. So I want you to leave you with that to the point that there's this big vacuum, right? It's like a natural skills tree. And then number 2, if you find yourself in that situation, but this is not by any means exhaustive, this is a lot more than what you need to do. Think about how you fit in, how you respect the people's experience that are working for you, your own experience. And if you're working like I do on a daily basis with a team that's much older than you that has different perspectives, how do you adjust yourself to their context? So again, thoughts, there's a lot of stats, there's a lot of different ways, a lot of different stories I can tell you. But I just want to leave you with that. this is a very great topic. It's not very scientific here. And you can certainly have a lot of different perspectives and opinions.
So just a kind of a wide angle view. You could really have titled this "Working in Multicultural Teams," or put any multi in front of whatever it is you want, right? And it become very internationalized. So there's going to be cultural clashes on generational levels, but also on geographical levels.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I mean, there's quite a lot of literature on that stuff already, right? One of the things, so if I go back to, again, 2013 to 2014, when I was a new manager, I was really trying to find content on how do I handle this situation, right? And I wasn't really finding material that helped. Right? I mean, if I wanted to find out about how do I deal with it, pick your favorite topic of diversity, there's quite a lot of literature on that. This one not so much, which is why I don't talk about it. But you're 100% right. You could talk about this in any sort of different context.
Yes, that was really just a preface. So I kind of span maybe 2.5 generations in my career. And what I found is that you cite this one manager who's kind of a techno-plus. But I mean, I've met some really young techno-pluses.
Absolutely.
And I actually consider myself one of the more tech-savvy people in my generation. So, and I probably, these are the best years of my creativity because I've also got the wisdom behind me to back up my decisions. But
again, you're absolutely right. And I that's why I led with this as a touchy topic, and how the HR people in the room. You can't paint the entire generation, like not every single millennial is identical, not every single group is identical. You have to also recognize that. You may not, right? Where you're working with a team that the age differences is not driving any culture change. That may be the true case. I certainly find in my specific instance that's not true. Right? And I've got some people within our org, for example, that are essentially close to they're about a year or two out for retirement. They don't really want to rock the boat. We've got some big things we can try to change. So how do I balance that without sort of losing the motivation for the day? So everyone's situation is significant. I don't want anyone to think that I'm painting broad brushes because they're not. There are some generalizations, but there are obviously spaces.
all I really wanted to say was that all these bullets are right on the mark, but I always think of it in terms of the individual I'm dealing with at that particular moment, right? Rather than trying to generalize across the whole broad culture of the organization.
I think the other point the way I look at it is just being able to relate. Again, it goes every single direction, whatever your diversity category. I'm talking about age, but it could be other things. How do you put yourself in the shoes of the other individual? And so, my boss and I have had some really good discussions recently about his mental state, how vastly different it is from my mental state, because we're in different stages of our career, and what he's willing to do versus what I'm willing to do, how aggressive I am versus how aggressive he is. You just have to be aware of that. And just factor that. Again, we talk about gender imbalance. We talk about diversity or religion or other things. I think even if you were to bring back up your code of conduct, the only age was in check, right? You didn't jump out at me, but my point is, I could be wrong, right? But I read the things we did, everybody knows. The point is, it's just another factor you have to consider, especially as this big shift is happening. We're at this imbalance in our lives.
So my question is specific to the instance where you talked about bringing the pies. So when you brought the pies, you wanted to do something good, but everybody else perceives it's bad.
Yep.
And that's a sign of maybe a misfit between yourself and the culture. I want to ask you, how did you sort of deal with that situation? And how do you deal with situations where you feel like maybe you don't completely align with the culture that you're in?
Yeah, so two parts to that. So on the personal side, it's not like you know right away, right? So it's not like, I gave around a bunch of apple pies and everyone said to me, oh, thank you for the apple pie. You suck up. It didn't happen that way, right? I didn't even know, right? I think I realized probably about a year later, right? Where it was brought up in a little comment, or, it was in the cafeteria actually. I was talking to the same VP, and she said something to me indirectly. And when I threw up everything out, I said, because of that, you think I'm this? I didn't say it, but that was my thought process after. And so there's nothing really I can do about that situation. It already happened, right? The way I handled it was, what am I going to do moving forward? I actually became more cognizant. Right? Maybe I was just naive, but I don't think everyone sits there, comes out of school or wherever, and first you think about culture and make sure it's in. I mean, I don't know if everyone does a nice one. I became more cognizant. The second half of your question, in terms of, if you don't fit in, maybe the unpopular answer is maybe that's not the best fit, right? I mean, there's no shame in saying that. I think there's this sort of sense that, you're going to make everything fit and everyone's going to fit. Sometimes it just doesn't work. So that's one option. I'm not saying the first option or the best option. But the other side of it is, what are you willing to do here, right? In order to make people work. So, for example, when I talked about knowing when to hold back, right? I mean, if you've got this personality type, it doesn't matter. You don't care. You're just going to say what you're going to say, right? You all know people like that, right? Then you live with it, right? Or you go find a place that that is more acceptable. So I mean, there isn't one answer for that question. Every situation is unique, kind of what we talked about here. Every culture is unique. Sometimes it just doesn't matter. That's okay. It's maybe an unpopular thing to say. All right. Thank you very much.